You're listening to Cattails, the podcast of SLC Faculty Local 417, your union connection. Each episode, we bring you real stories from our members, practical tips on your rights, and the kind of information that helps us all move forward.
Welcome back to Cattails. I'm your host, Julie White, and today's episode's a big one because, well, let's face it, this past week, it's been a lot. We're starting on the convention floor, where a surprise merger announcement from St. Lawrence and Fleming set off a wave of organizing. You'll hear how delegates responded and what OPSEU SEFPO is committing to in order to protect the bargaining unit work across the province. We'll chat with academic president Kim Bell from Local 352 at Fleming College, and then we'll get a chance to celebrate our own Gillian Axten, who's received a well-deserved provincial award. Then, on the Fine Print Forum, our panel of Local 418 President Amanda Shaw and Christina Decarie and Chris Chrysler from Local 417 will share their thoughts on Tuesday's online town hall. And stay tuned for a chat with Algonquin's Martin Lee, who shares some interesting insights into academic staff trends across Ontario's colleges. So let's start off with an update from the OPSEU SEFPO convention floor, where the surprise Friday announcement of our college's merger resulted in quick mobilization. On Saturday morning, the Provincial Women's Committee brought forward an emergency motion in response to the announcement by St. Lawrence and Fleming colleges. It spoke to the dangerous precedent that threatens the security of college academic and support members across the province and the chronic underfunding of post-secondary education by the Ford government. Supported by more than 90% of the delegates from across a broad array of services, the motion called upon OPSEU to dedicate specialized legal and staff resources to our locals to aggressively protect all bargaining unit work. OPSEU will immediately launch and fund a province-wide campaign demanding the government properly fund post-secondary education at sustainable levels, and that the union commits to lobby against any future legislation that would allow for college mergers. Here's Fleming's Support Local 351 President Marcia Steeves speaking to the delegates.
We know there's efficiency reports out there that we will not be the only merger to happen. I'm standing here with colleagues from colleges, from St. Lawrence, from Fleming, your colleagues that are graduates of the college system. It's not just my fight. It's not St. Lawrence's fight. This is all of our fight, and we need this.
Christine Kelsey from Local 416 at Algonquin College and chair of the support staff division across the Ontario colleges also spoke up.
Ontario is at a crossroads here, and we are seeing now the start of the loss of our college system. It's been happening for a while, but it's really accelerating at this point. And colleges train the workers of Ontario. There's hardly a business or a government agency that doesn't have college grads working at it. And if we start losing colleges, we will start losing the ability for people to afford education and afford to have good lives. So this is a serious hit to our college system, and we need to fight back or we're going to lose an important part of our social system in Ontario.
I'm joined now by Kim Bell, president of Local 352, representing faculty at Fleming College. Kim, the motion of solidarity and extra supports just passed at the OPSEU convention. It's a really strong message that the big union is standing behind our locals. What does that do for you?
Yeah, I think it gives us a little bit of hope at Fleming College specifically. We've been in the trenches for a good 3 years. We've been experiencing layoffs now for quite a while. I recognize that some other colleges are about to sort of encroach on that terrible space that we've been in for a while. So we've been hit pretty hard. We're sort of limping along. People are fairly, I think, deflated. Our members sort of need a breath of fresh air and some more wind in their sails to know that we have some support from our comrades within OPSEU, and it's not just our local trying to continually limp along here. So hopefully the resolution will elicit some change and, bring some bigger support and larger support for for us at the local.
And as unexpected as this announcement was on Friday, I'm pretty sure you probably didn't have it on your bingo card either.
I'm currently the second vice president. However, we've had some layoffs at our local recently, and so that has sort of skyrocketed me into the interim president position currently.
What are some of the messages that you're sharing with your staff?
So right now, the messages are that we know very little for the most part. We were provided the merger notice 4 minutes prior to it going as an all staff. And so we essentially know the same information that our members know. And so we've been working pretty diligently with DivX during our little time in between all the other busy things that are happening at convention to try to figure out what our next steps are going to be in this process.
I know you mentioned that there's been significant changes at Fleming, and it was certainly one of the first to start to experiencing cuts and program cancellations in the province. Can you walk us through kind of what that picture looks like now?
It's interesting. It depends on how you view it. I would argue that the erosion of our partial load, although it's not considered layoff in terms of full-time faculty, I would argue the fact that that is actually an erosion of our local. So we've had an obliteration essentially of most of our contract faculty. I think we were around 270. We're down to 165, I believe, full-time faculty at the moment. We were hovering around 210 a couple of years ago. And then we've also had VRIP through our employment stability processes. So people are taking what is called in the title voluntary retirement, but they're retiring because they know that they're not going to have a job. So they would likely still be here. So I would consider that lumped in as well. So we've had a number of voluntary retirements as well.
What would you like faculty, staff, students, and the community to do?
I think just being aware of what's happening, right, to our community. I think we've done a really good job at Fleming College, especially in 2024 when we experienced the largest volume of our programs being canceled. We've had 50 cancellations so far. In 2025, we had 29 cancellations. A lot of that were environmental. And so we have a lot of environmental activists within our students, within our faculty, and they did engage with local stakeholders, businesses. There were rallies, there were pickets. And so I think just bringing broader awareness to the provincial landscape, because we are smaller communities. We're not Toronto, we're not Ottawa. I think we really need stakeholders in more dense populated areas to understand the ripple effect that's happening right now in colleges.
Thank you so much, Kim. We really appreciate you sharing your voice and ideas with the listeners across our colleges.
Thank you for having me. It's been great during convention. I know it's been a terrible time to get the news, but I think the silver lining is we're all kind of here together instead of being siloed and getting the news in our own little silos, right? So it's kind of been nice to be able to talk with all of you and speak with all of you in person, right? And connect immediately with some pretty surprising news that we weren't expecting.
They hope you won't.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Fine Print Forum. We're looking past the headlines and getting into what really matters for the people who make St. Lawrence College run. Today's conversation is anchored in the Tuesday, April 14th Town Hall with President and CEO Glenn Vullebrecht. It's a session that raised important questions about integration, staffing, workload, transparency, and how decisions at the top are really rippling through. Today, we're going to unpack the fine print of that town hall, what was said, what wasn't, what it means for folks doing the work every day. And to do that, we've brought together a powerhouse panel representing both sides of the house, academic and support, because none of this exists in silos. First, representing the incredible support staff who keep our college functioning in ways that most people never see, we have Amanda Shaw, president of Local 418. Next, from Local 417, we have the Christinas. Yeah, we're going to embrace that brand. Christina Decarie, president of Local 417, and alongside her is Chris Chrysler, our communications lead. So with that, let's get into it. Let's start with you, Amanda. What were your impressions of Tuesday's town hall? What really stood out for you?
So I was expecting maybe a little bit more information about kind of timelines, and we got a little bit of it for sure. What I was not prepared for was the suck it up buttercup kind of attitude that came along with it. And because the wording over the past couple of days has been changing, right? At the beginning it was we've merged and now they're going to kind of sort it out. But then the past couple of days it's been no, we haven't merged. We've declared intent to merge. But then again today, Glenn basically said it was a done deal and we need to get on board. I'm not sure because he had notes, so I'm not sure if this was just a slip or if somebody did actually put this in his notes for his presentation, but he did definitely take issue with the part where he was talking about not stressing about the things that we can't control, and just basically the paraphrasing was keep your heads down and do your jobs and do them well so you don't get laid off, was what I felt the message was there. So I left it feeling, I think, more frustrated than I was going into it, if that makes sense. And that was both shocking and not shocking for me.
I had a slightly different experience. The language is changing. So a definite shift from we've merged to, oh, we're not really merging. There's just going to be an umbrella over both of us, which are two very different things and have profound implications for the processes that we need to work through in this merger. So that shift in language is not minor.
Is this a change in language, Christina, like what we saw with Brockville and Cornwall campuses and them backing off of calling them learning centers and yet still going ahead and cutting the services that are there?
Yeah. Are you asking me whether or not I believe the language, the change in language? I don't personally. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But no, my gut says that a year from now, we will have a brand new name and we will be one college. If I'm wrong and we end up looking more like a university, hospitals, an umbrella organization, fine, I was wrong. What matters is, are the processes that we're supposed to follow to ensure fairness, are they going to be followed? It will be the union's job, both staff and faculty, to work hard to ensure that they are. But if the college cannot be clear or decide what it's doing, then there will be some issue over, well, what process are we following? So right now we're in a little bit of a dance. So the college says we're merging. And so OPSEU says, okay, now a new process begins. And then the college says, well, no, we're not actually merging. So we don't need to follow the new process. We're doing something else. We're integrating. Oh, that sounds an awful lot like what we need to do for this new process. So if we can't even decide what is happening, then it's hard to know which process to follow. That is a problem, and that creates a lot of headaches for the people who have to do all this work of whatever thing this is that we are creating. I did find that I got more clarity from today's town hall than I was expecting. Do I know and understand everything? Of course not. But I got more than I was expecting. So my big concern moving forward is that the college historically is not particularly good at change management. In fact, we just don't do it. We don't have any change management. And in fact, to paraphrase Amanda, suck it up, buttercup, is the extent to which we get change management at the college. I would like to see this change managed with more sensitivity and more proactively than I have seen things change in the past. We've still not come together post-pandemic and said, who are we and what are we doing here and what happened to us and what happened to our culture and what do we want to do about it? And now we're going to be merging or integrating or, I don't know, having some kind of open relationship with a college hours down the road. And that needs to be actively managed, not simply something that happens to us.
Chris Chrysler, what's your overarching thoughts and response?
I tend to be of two minds after such events, not that we've had one exactly like this before. On one hand, I can respect that we had to do something. And I think we've touched on that in the past, different things that have come up, that the college needs to act. And to me, I see it very similar to the internationalization in that this is a temporary solution to fix a problem that the government created. We have no choice. If we don't do anything, something has to happen. And so I don't think it's inherently bad what is being proposed. However, I do believe the process by which it is being implemented is a problem. As union environment, we undergo collective bargaining. We do that for a reason, to have a collective agreement, which is a document that's saying we both agree to these terms. And much like a divorce settlement, you know it's good if nobody's happy. And that tends to be us coming out of collective bargaining, where both sides feel like they maybe didn't get what they wanted. So we know we must be somewhere down the middle. So in this document, we have both agreed that should a process like this happen, there are steps that are going to be taken. And when the college ignores those steps, I think that is a problem, whether it's been intentionally or not. It's a red flag. It says stop. There needs to be an evaluation of how we move forward. And at very least, I feel that the union executive, even if only our presidents, should have been aware in advance that this was coming down, so that there could be questions asked and put to management in order to best support the members. Our college has a tendency of doing this thing where they dump information on us and then don't provide any backup or any details. And then what happens is everybody is left to make up and fill in the gaps. And that's when we experience tension among our members and stress. And it's just so unnecessary. So many times these things can be mitigated by a conversation. And so I am very disheartened that that conversation did not take place, especially when it's outlined in our collective agreement.
Okay. And Amanda, one of the quotes that I wrote down from the session this morning: this should not be a shock or surprise to anyone.
I've been chastising myself since the announcement came out for being surprised, because it was specifically stated as a recommendation in the efficiency audits that were leaked in the fall when the support staff were on strike. So while there was some level of shock, I keep pausing and asking myself why, because it was there. And people may not remember this, but right after the international student visa cap announcements, Glenn started joking around at every table he was at that we might get sucked into Algonquin College, that the colleges were going to have to look at something different, and that, you know, who knew, we could end up part of Algonquin College. So I don't believe that this was something that was in the works as a result of the efficiency audits. I think that there were conversations happening about it before the efficiency audits, and the efficiency audits were simply a tool to solidify those plans or talks that were in the works before.
I can tell you that in the former School of Business Kingston campus, we've been having this kind of conversation amongst ourselves since around 2022, when we saw, post-pandemic, the just outrageous expansion of international student numbers and the profound reliance on international student numbers. And we could see the bottom falling out. We didn't know when it was going to happen, but it was absolutely going to fall out. And so then speculation on, okay, well, what does that look like? What does it look like when the bottom falls out? And international students either stop coming here at all or extremely low numbers. And then we've lost so much domestic enrollment and we haven't built it back up yet. Well, what does it look like? And what could happen? And we were speculating all kinds of things, like there's going to be 4 regional colleges for the entire province. And we had it all arranged which colleges were going to go together to create, the Great Northern College and the Great Eastern College. So even with all of that speculation, I was surprised. I was completely surprised. And yet, in retrospect, I should not have been surprised, but I was surprised.
I think what it does is make us look a little bit closer to what's in those efficiency reports, and looking at some of the numbers, and there's an awful lot more that can come. Maybe we've been a bit Pollyanna.
Well, I think that we know that those reports are a blueprint. We said to each other, these reports are a blueprint. We knew that they're we still know that they are a blueprint for what can come. I don't think that we're Pollyanna. You know what I think we are? I think we're really busy and we're really tired. And I look back at the work that we have done, both unions and OPSEU as a whole over the past several years. And I look at stuff that we've missed or we've picked up on later than maybe we should have. But in the moment, we absolutely could not pick up on it and do it because we were running full tilt and we were up to our eyeballs and beyond. And we should not beat ourselves up for not predicting something that, yes, is written down for us, but it's not like it said, Dear Christina, on the morning of Friday, April 10th, or whatever day it was, this is going to happen to you. I mean, we knew, but we don't know. And I think that we need to forgive ourselves for not knowing for sure exactly what was going to happen and when.
Also, yes, there were lots of comments about combining services like licensing and that kind of thing. I do recall Glenn mentioning that before, but not really in the context of that requiring a merger of institutions that I recall. But for him to say today that it shouldn't be a surprise, I mean, I feel like that's fairly typical SLC gaslighting. We do get that kind of thing a lot. Well, what do you mean you didn't know? He has never said that. He's often said not to speculate, right? So we don't speculate, and then we're told we should have known. That to me is a bit frustrating.
I feel like his comments earlier on about us getting sucked into Algonquin College was a passive aggressive way of easing everybody into it. It was pushing the message, because there were talks. And I think for me, when he said that we shouldn't be surprised, that's immediately where my head went, was he's been saying it since the announcement about the international student cap reductions. And as far as some other stuff that he said today, what I found interesting was he indicated that the reason that they're doing this integration is because if we stayed SLC, we'd run out of money and we'd have to cut more jobs. Like, we'd have to cut harder, we'd have to cut more staff, and that he's doing this specifically to save jobs, except that we know that there will be job losses as a result of this merger. So there are pieces in the presentation that made me think, well, that's expensive, and the only way to save some of that money, or the larger way to save money, is to cut jobs. So it's talking from both sides of his mouth for me personally.
I think too, there was no clarity in how this saves us money other than licensing and perhaps fewer management. So if we were to believe that everything else stays the same, and apart from perhaps some layoffs of faculty that haven't occurred yet, like, where is the money savings long term then? I haven't, I don't know if that information would be shared to us. But in all this, what is, I think, also important for us to remember, that ultimately this has been caused by chronic underfunding by the government. And I think I would caution members not to misdirect their anger. I think I have been saying for months, if not longer, that people are not angry enough, but it's not enough to be angry. You need to be angry and direct it at the right place. And I think we need to build momentum against the government in order to fund us appropriately, because like internationalization, the colleges solved the problem and the government therefore did not increase funding. So this is another way that the colleges have to find a way to function. They've solved the problem, theoretically. So what is to make the government fund us? We know that the Ford government, everywhere you look, the Ford government is underfunding public services in an attempt for privatization. And people, really need to stand against this. We need to pull together and make sure we identify the correct enemy, because it's not our other workers. And as frustrated as we are with the college, on some level, you know, apart from the collective agreement violation, which is significant, even they aren't our enemies. Our managers are not enemies. They did not make this decision either. And so we really need to focus some of that collectively toward the government to make change that benefits us all in the long run.
And this really is about the need for organization. So how are we coming together as support and academic staff?
Well, all of us, we just came out of a meeting with our divisional executive from OPSEU, because they are ready to organize rallies and shows of solidarity. I can tell you that from my perspective, the support that I've received from OPSEU has been tremendous. Our staff rep has reached out to both Amanda and me to say, what do you need from me? Let's talk. Do you need me? What message do you have for the other locals? We have a CESC, College Employment Stability rep from Divisional, who is devoted to supporting us. And I just had a meeting with her this morning. And then, of course, being at convention on Friday when we received this messaging was actually a great thing. So the support from OPSEU has been tremendous.
I would echo what Christina is saying. It really has been tremendous. The support also from our divisional executives and other local presidents has been nice. Added some additional camaraderie, because while this integration, merger, whatever we want to call it, is currently happening to SLC and Fleming, the writing is on the wall that it's going to happen to more colleges. We're simply the first ones. We're essentially the pilot project to sort out the system. I will say I'm always grateful for the open communication between myself and Christina and other people on your LEC with people on our LEC. I think that as a college, our two locals do really good work in keeping each other in the loop and staying connected and doing things to support each other. So I'm very grateful for that.
And in terms of mobilizing our staff, how and what do we need to do? We do have building work to do.
The biggest issue I think right now is people are so fatigued. It has been, as pointed out earlier in the conversation, a lot of change for a lot of years. So I think most people recognize that we need change. We just can't handle more change or change without transparency. So we need responsible change with clear end goals, with clear steps. The change management that Christina mentioned earlier is not SLC's strong point, which is astonishing to me, because we have faculty who are trained in that, teach it, and had careers in that, and yet our own institution is horrible at communications and change management when it comes to these things. So it's dealing with the fatigue. It's getting people to pay attention, because I think there's been so much doom and gloom, or so many things that we've said over the last few years. You need to pay attention to this. This is really important. And it has all been important. That it's kind of lost its effect. When you say, hey, pay attention, this is important, it's kind of like, oh God, what now? So I think that's our biggest challenge, is just getting people to realize, like, because on the faculty side, we have not seen major layoffs, major job loss. We have, of course, lost many of our contract people, but full-time people have yet to see the impact, because our CESC has worked so well behind the scenes, preventing or slowing down that process in some ways, that it's not real to people yet. But we are at the end of this. We don't know when. That is up to the college, but we know that we are running out of time with that. And so, like, people need to plug in, I guess, and then we can build from there.
And just to go back to kind of, Amanda, what you started with, Glenn talked about the fact that there's going to be some anxiety and suggested that we all focus on what we can control, and that's serving our students today.
I get why he would say it, but I don't think that it resonated with the members the way that he'd intended it to. And we know our support staff and go above and beyond for the students. They do. Like they do their absolute best to make sure. And even as we've seen the support staff bargaining unit cut and services reduced and changed, you still have members who are going above and beyond. They're advocating for the students, they're advocating for services for the students. And I don't anticipate that changing despite whatever we're going to be faced with over the next year, because at the end of the day, there's a reason people want to work in the colleges, and it's because they want to be involved in higher education and they want to be those supports to those students. And I think that our support staff complement, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that didn't take that seriously. So I don't think that that's going to be a concern, but it's going to be a lot of work over the next year. Like we've got questions, obviously, as a union local. Our local executive team is meeting tomorrow to have some discussions, because we're going to need to start kind of guiding the members on things that they can be doing over the next year to make sure that their documentation is in order in case we are in a job loss situation or back into the Article 15 process. Because while the belief is with integrations, it happens and we should expect it, we really don't know what that scale is going to look like. And we're committing to, keeping our members as informed as possible and sharing what we can when we can as we get it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really sound like labor relations can answer any of our questions at this point either, because it's a new process. So I think that this is uncharted territory for everybody involved. And it worries me that, because a year just doesn't seem like a very long time, given everything I think that we need to be looking at.
And I'd also say, like, kind of back to the idea that there was a lot of suck and blowing going on here at the same time in this. If it truly is a year, and this isn't about reductions and is about expansion, as it has been claimed, then why are we talking layoffs still for faculty? If this arrangement is supposed to provide us with more programming and more opportunities, why on earth would we lay people off and then need more faculty? Why wouldn't we find places for those faculty for the next year, find work, allow them to teach courses that maybe they normally wouldn't but are qualified for, have them building curriculum, those types of special assignments? If it is truly over a year and is truly about expansion and not reductions, like it can't be about both in my eyes, and maybe that's just my lack of knowledge in the area, but I can't see how this is helping with efficiency but also expansion. I don't get that. But
it goes along with we're doing this to improve things for students. Oh, there's going to be no change for students. What is it? Because those two sentences just followed one another.
I'm also concerned about both Brockville and Cornwall campuses. Only, again, Glenn had said a couple months ago he didn't want to talk about the efficiency audit reports because SLC had done everything that they were going to do in the efficiency audit reports. And 2 months later, the Fleming merger, that is a recommendation out of the efficiency audit reports, gets announced. And there are recommendations about the closures of Cornwall and Brockville campuses in 2027 or 2028 in the event that the college's financial position doesn't change. And I think we definitely need to be paying a lot of attention to that as well, because we're community colleges and we were designed to provide viable educational opportunities in smaller communities where we know that people can't afford to travel. And I worry for not just St. Lawrence College's smaller campuses, but also for Fleming's.
That's the messaging I've been trying to get out into the media is It's not that this merger is in itself a bad thing. Colleges are doing what they need to do to survive. The bad thing is that the colleges are so poorly funded that we don't have a library in Brockville campus or Cornwall campus. My concern is that this is just one more element in the transformation of public post-secondary education in Ontario, and it involves a diminishment of opportunities for learners, especially those in rural or remote areas.
All right, let's do some closing comments.
Ultimately, the college makes their decisions, and our role is to make sure, to the best of our ability, that the collective agreement's being followed, and to put concerns forward. What we have done has been set up 2 fireside chats this week on Thursday, one at noon and one at 7 p.m. I've also sent an email out that includes a link for people to submit questions that we may not be able to answer in the moment, but certainly as we're able to answer them, we'll put that information out through the digests and through future fireside chats. It also gives us questions to take to management on members' behalf for those who are not comfortable with having their name and email attached to the request Glenn has made for questions. I do think it's very important that people ask questions, and we'll certainly forward those along. And if you're comfortable asking them directly to management, please by all means do so. People need to be engaged in the process, and obviously we'll assist in that in any way that we can.
Right, Amanda, do you have a message for your staff?
We are always happy to take questions to management and submit them for anybody who is not comfortable in attaching their name to a particular question. We, as the elected representatives of Local 418, also have questions that we will be submitting to try to get some more information. We're getting together as a group tomorrow, and we will be reaching out to the membership. I've had a cursory conversation with Marcia Steves, who's the president of Local 351 at Fleming College for support staff. And we're looking at some point in the coming weeks to potentially do a Zoom chat for both locals together to have. I do think it's important to build some of those bridges because we're going to end up coworkers, and whether it happens now or it happens in April, we're just looking at a bunch of different ways to engage.
Love it. And this is kind of along the lines of Glenn's reminder to us to uphold our values of belonging, innovation, and teamwork. So Local 417, 418, and our comrades at Fleming College, we will certainly be really building those values into the work that we're doing going forward.
And it is really important, I think, to reiterate that they aren't our enemy there. They are our colleagues, and we need to support each other through this process. They have been through a particularly difficult time at Fleming over the last couple of years. And at the end of the day, we're in the same boat, and they're not our competition. Let's direct our attention to the government here.
Management didn't know. It's also important to note as well, they really didn't know. Glenn basically gave what I feel was the list of people who were aware of what was happening. And outside of the list presented today at that town hall, I don't believe that any other manager knew.
And now it's time for another edition of Member Spotlight.
Friday was a hard day. There's no way around it. The merger announcement landed like a weight on the whole sector. Uncertainty, frustration, worry, all of it sitting right under the surface as we walked into the evening provincial OPSEU awards. And in the middle of that heaviness, something important happened. Something that reminded us of who we are and who we have in our corner. Because one of those human rights awards, an award that recognizes real sustained work in equity and justice, was given to someone from our own local, Gillian Axten. Now, if you're a regular listener, you know Gillian. Even while she's on sabbatical, she's here with us in the Is It a Gripe or a Grievance segment. She's helping members navigate a messy, confusing, sometimes emotional reality of workplace rights. Her voice is more than part of the backbone of this podcast. It's part of the backbone of our union. But what Friday night recognized was something even bigger. Gillian's decades-long commitment to disability rights and disability justice within OPSEU SEFPO. She's been one of the people quietly, consistently pushing our union to do better, not just in statements, but in practice. She's kept the Disability Rights Caucus strong. She's fought for members who needed someone in their corner. She's made sure accessibility isn't an afterthought. And in true Gillian fashion, her most recent contribution is both practical and brilliant. A playing cards icebreaker that represents 8 different disability categories. It's a tool that opens conversations, builds understanding, and helps members connect in ways that actually matter. It's simple, it's smart, and it's deeply human, just like her approach to everything she does. So on a night when so many of us were feeling the weight of the day, a day that started with the news about a triple shooting at Lambton College, hearing Gillian's name called was the moment of clarity that we needed. A reminder that even in uncertainty, the work continues. The equity doesn't pause. The leadership doesn't disappear just because the landscape shifts. And for those of us at Local 417, it was a moment of pride because this wasn't just a provincial award. It was recognition of someone who has shaped our local, supported our members, and strengthened our communities in ways that don't always get seen, but are absolutely felt. So from all of us here at Cattails, congratulations, Gillian. Your work matters, your leadership matters, and this recognition could not be more deserved.
There are so many people I'd like to thank. DRC couldn't have done anything without you. You have pushed me, pulled me. We fought, we've made up, we've done incredible work. I'd like to also just thank absolutely everybody who's corrected stuff for me, because I've learned nothing without somebody editing. So my whole logo, thank you very much. Got a quick story to tell you. So JP and I have known each other a really long time, CAAT members, right? Long before JP was, I don't know, whatever. We were at meetings together, sometimes getting along, sometimes not. And in a more recent event, I did stand up at a mic at convention and call him a ableist. And that was not because I thought that was their intention. But the idea behind ableism is we often forget that we need to look at access, universal access for all. And when I see where OPSEU's culture is going, I know that it doesn't matter what our strategies are, we're going to get there, we're going to get to universal access. I know it because we have a culture behind us.
My next guest is Martin Lee from Algonquin College, someone many of you will remember from the last full-time bargaining team. Martin brings a rare combination of sharp analysis and grounded sector-wide perspective. He's been watching closely and speaking plainly about what's happening across Ontario's colleges when it comes to the distribution of work and the growing precarity shaping our classrooms, our departments, and our profession. He's also got his finger on the pulse of the efficiency and accountability reviews that have been conducted by the colleges for the ministry. Martin, I know you've received some interesting data through the Freedom of Information.
This was done by OPSEU, and it is public, so it's a FOI, it's public information. What we got was a list of all the colleges that, up until the date of when that FOI was filed, had filled in for an efficiency and accountability report per the Ministry of Colleges. So at the time, there was Algonquin, who was going to be done by News Group, Boreal, MNP, Cambrian, KPMG, and so on. And then there's St. Lawrence, Strategy Corp, and Deloitte, and collaborative submission, CO St. Lawrence. What is a collaborative submission?
It's a great question.
Excellent question, isn't it? So we did some more digging and we found that it's not labeled here, but we can join some dots. There is a group who are working somewhat collaboratively with the ministry, and they call themselves the Eastern Ontario College Eastern Ontario College Consortium. But they are St. Lawrence, Loyalist, Fleming, Algonquin, and La Cité. And in fact, if you do some digging a bit, you can actually find under the EOCC or versions of the Eastern Ontario College Consortium, you can find sort of joint things that they have done with the ministry, as far as education is concerned. I don't think it's a coincidence that two of those colleges are now deciding that they're going to join up to become one. That's not a coincidence, right? And what I would be more alarmed by is the idea that there are three others that haven't joined up on this, right?
So the efficiency report for St. Lawrence that was created by Strategy Corp was leaked earlier this fall, but we certainly haven't heard much about that collaborative report.
So there were a series of them that did come out during academic bargaining, and they were prohibited from release. But we know that some colleges, they were floating around in the ether somewhere. During support bargaining, they got their hands on them somehow. I don't have the details of that, but so there are, I believe, 10 of them that are out and about, including St. Lawrence's is one of them. I think Fleming did too. I think Fleming's one is in existence as well.
Interesting. Okay.
I actually just wrote an article about this for Local Lines, which is the Algonquin College faculty union newsletter. But the question I ask is, well, when is a college not a college anymore? We at Algonquin, that's really the only true experience I can speak to. Are now a college that doesn't teach hairstyling or estheticians. We don't teach hospitality management. We don't teach regulatory affairs in a G8 capital. We don't have academic upgrading. So if you turn up to college and you can't read or write in sufficient detail, or do math, or have computer skills to the point where you can function into college, we can't help you. We no longer have a students with adult learning difficulties program. We don't have animation. We don't have horticulture. We have, like, at what stage are we not a college? It's outrageous. It's outrageous what they're doing, and they're doing all of it flying directly in the face of the collective agreement. They are, as they are at most colleges, just ignoring the provisions of the CA to get what they want done.
It's really union busting is what they're trying to do. Fortunately, we are unionized kind of wall to wall, but that precarity is increasing, right?
Well, we are unionized wall to wall, but I think it's also worth pointing out that the part-time and sessional faculty don't have a collective agreement yet. So there are no provisions that protect any of their work. What's more, we are seeing system-wide a very rapid erosion of partial load teaching. So one of the things that I presented to our DevEx is a system-wide analysis of where all the job numbers are going. We have this in the colleges. We have a regular repeated census of faculty and support staff, which occurs in October. It's some colleges call it the CEC staffing report, others call it the October staffing report. But we've seen that partial load numbers are decimated right now. They've just dropped precipitously, and they're being replaced by part-time. Right, so moving away from all the provisions, all the protections we've worked, that strike we went through in 2017 to finally get a registry that would enable these people to have some degree of protection. It's just being thrown to the wind.
How, Martin, kind of backing up, did you look at trends kind of prior to the pandemic? Like, did you see a growth in partial load, and has full-time been fairly static?
So we during bargaining we produced a graph that could that speaks to this, but in particular what we noticed is that there was a slow but steady increase in full-time employment over the last decade. Slowly we've been gaining, and we've been slowly increasing full-time work. What we instead see is that partial load numbers were ballooning and skyrocketing. So to the point where during the 2004 round of bargaining, the full-time and partial load divisions of faculty were equally split. It was 47% were partial load and 53 were full-time, right? So, you know, that's half of all of the people who were unionized at the time were precarious and on these contracts and didn't know what they were going to do year over year. But what we've noticed since is that kept going. It just kept ticking along until this all broke. In 2014, there was a moratorium on hiring of using partial load data to hire full-time faculty. So right at that point, you see a change in trend where suddenly partial load hiring took off. Now, if you look at the last year, so this 2025, October 25 was the last data point we got. You see full-time have dropped, not as fast as everybody else. We could talk about why that is.
Yep.
But partial load have really plummeted. So partial load are now down to about where 2018 levels were, as far as numbers.
Yep.
Full-time have lagged. They are dropping, and we're expecting them to drop significantly further. The reason why they are lagging is because of the collective agreement. So in the collective agreement, there are provisions for full-time, employment. For example, if you want to not hire a partial loader, all you have to do is not give them another contract, right? For full-time faculty, there is a 1-month period where the CESC, which is the College Employment Stability Committee, turns over their workload, sees if they can find them another job. Then there's a 3-month provision where they are not laid off yet, but they have time to see if they can find other work. It's 90 days of pay before they eventually disappear. So we're expecting that this will keep dropping, but over time we're expecting this to collapse significantly as well. So this is the total number of faculty in the system. So you've got full-time, part-time, partial load, and sessional there. And this is going back to 2021. You can see very clearly a drop in virtually all of the groups, right? So part-time is dropping, partial load are dropping, full-time are dropping, sessional are dropping, although not maybe as fast as everybody else. If you look at the ratio of them if you take that as 100%, that whole group is 100%, what is our current teaching made out of? And you see very clearly that the colleges are relying increasingly on part-time work. You see the partial load drop, and you can see the part-time is increasing. That's where the colleges are moving. They're moving to precarious work. They're moving to those part-timers, and it's going to make negotiating a part-time collective agreement much more difficult, because given that there are so many of them, the colleges are immediately going to say, well, we can't afford any of this, right? That's where things are at. That's going to be their next ploy.
Okay. And over time, you're seeing that. Do you see any return really of partial load?
Well, the return really will depend entirely upon what we as voters and community members do. One of the frustrations I've experienced is motivating employees and the general public as to what is going on in our colleges. This is not a new problem. This started back in 2018 when Ford came in. And for some reason, Ontario continues to vote him in. But, the system is now fully broken, right? And colleges are moving to this neoliberal austerity, thing that you are seeing, where they're cutting services, cutting programs, neglecting their basic duties to the communities that they serve. Right? Let's not forget that the Act, the Colleges of Applied Arts and Technology Act, establishes the colleges for the benefit of those communities. Right? And they are just disappearing. They're about to get slaughtered away.
And yet the public doesn't ask any questions about, well, why? And there's just so much blind following along and kind of believing
Yeah.
what's being said. Like, what's going on?
I wish I knew why it was that people weren't outraged by what they're saying. I wish I knew. You know, Canada is a G8 nation, and like I said, Ontario is the largest province with the largest economy in that G8 nation. But if they won't take care of their public education, I don't know what to say. Ontario colleges are going through the largest mass layoff in Ontario's history. Going back a year or so ago, when we started really projecting this, we were looking at numbers and we were guesstimating about 10,000 jobs in the college system. We're way beyond that now. It hasn't even been a full year and we are past that 10,000 job number. And we are nowhere near done. But if a loss of 30% of your colleagues isn't enough to make you go, oh, I wonder what's going on here, then I don't know what to say. This is going to be very dramatic, and I hope people will allow me a little poetic license. But during the bubonic plague, it was roughly 1 in 4 of the population who disappeared within the period of 3 or 4 years. We're approaching, like, with a bit of expansion, we're talking 1 in 5 right now, and the college system might be disappearing.
That's significant.
1 in 5 of our colleagues is now out of a job, right? Unable to pay mortgages during one of the most expensive times in modern history. But if that's not enough to catch people's attention, then there is a much bigger problem going on, and it's not the colleges. It's apathy, and I don't know how to fix that. I just don't. But we do know that during the part-time bargaining survey, that roughly half of all of our part-time faculty depend on the income they are getting from the colleges to make their ends meet. And that means that they are depending on the salary they are making off less than 6 hours a week, less than or equal to 6 hours a week from the colleges to just make their ends meet. And imagine what's going to happen to those people if they lose that work.
When our efficiency report says that we're going to drive down the costs of paying professionals to educate.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And now, the 411 on the 417.
All right, listeners, get your pens ready. It's time for the 411 on the 417. First, we're inviting all faculty. That means part-time, full-time, partial load, sessional, counselors to join us for a fireside chat this Thursday. We may not have all the answers yet, but we will share what we know about the integration announcement and start unpacking what it means together. To make these sessions accessible for everyone's wildly different schedules, we're hosting 2 different sessions, one from 12 to 1:30 and another from 7 to 9. So watch your inbox in the local 417 website for details. Speaking of inboxes, what? You don't get our emails? Go to slcfaculty.ca and get yourself on that list. And if you're part-time or sessional, listen closely. You are a member of Local 417, but we need you to sign your membership card to receive that timely, important union information. You can do that right on the website too, at slcfaculty.ca. And finally, our AGM is May 28th from 7 to 9 p.m. Consider this your nudge to think about running for a seat on our LEC. We've got a huge year ahead and a lot of important work to do.
You've been listening to Cat Tales, stories that matter to faculty and beyond. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, visit slcfaculty.ca, and stay connected with us on social media.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or statements of OPSEU, SEFPO, St. Lawrence College, or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. While every effort is made to ensure accuracy, SLC faculty, Local 417 makes no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the information shared. Any reliance placed on such information is strictly at the listener's own risk. Music and sound effects used in this podcast are licensed or royalty-free. We respect copyright law and encourage our listeners to do the same.